1 Roman Scorpio, the ancient sniper. Get this, up on a Roman rampart, 2 soldiers are doing a dance that looks boring until it is. One twists a winch, the other steadies a square frame bristling with sinew. A third crouches with a bolt that's more iron than wood. They're not aiming at a crowd, they're aiming at a face. The Scorpio is a giant battering slingshot. It's compact torsion engineering. 2 vertical frames hold bundles of twisted sinew, animal tendon dried, combed, and bound so tightly it hums. Between them, a short throwing arm sits like a spring-loaded finger. You draw it back with a ratchet, it loads tension evenly across both bundles, and when the trigger geometry breaks clean, that arm snaps forward into a slider that kisses the bolt goodbye at alarming speed. Torsion makes sense once you felt it. You're storing energy in a twist, not a bend. It's less sensitive to arm length, more demanding about materials, and cruel about moisture. Sinew hates damp. Romans knew this, which is why Scorpios traveled with covers, grease, and people who did nothing but fuss over strings. On campaign, quartermasters treated sinew like bread, fresh matters. Josephus, writing about the siege of Jerusalem, describes defenders and attackers using engines that drove bolts through ranks. And he calls out how officers learned not to show their helmets over walls. Reliefs and fragments back him up. Small frames, metal fittings, iron bolt heads stamped and standardized. In modern reconstructions, when crews drill the load and fire cadence, you get tight groupings at ranges that force men to duck. It isn't a myth when a 2-man team drops the third shot a hand's width from the first. The lesson spreads like smoke. If you look important, you die first. Sighting wasn't magic, just practice. A notch along the slider, a peg on the frame, and a routine that accounts for wind. The gunner calls the gusts, the loader heaves the ratchet to the same count every time, and nobody rushes the trigger. It's the trigger, by the way, that shows Roman craft, sear angles that break clean with minimal creep. If that sounds like a modern firearm note, that's the point. Clean break, consistent launch, repeat. On open ground, Scorpios roll with legions, mounted on carts or carried in parts. The logistics matter more than the drama. Teams rotate to keep sinew cool. Iron bolts ride in crates separated by size and weight because consistency is accuracy. You can see the doctrine under the dust. Standardized field artillery that plugs into a system of roads, depots, and drill. The weapon is the machine, but the machine is also the schedule. What does it do to a battle? First, command decapitation. An officer raises a standard and the standard dips because the arm behind it goes slack. Second, harassment. A line that thought it was safe at 100 paces finds out it is. Third, siege sanity. When you're on a wall and you can reach their engineers, they stop building ladders right in front of you. The fear factor is real. Stories spread faster than bolts and men start telling each other not to be the tallest thing around. Height becomes guilt. Rank becomes a target painted on your spine. There's a quiet cost. Torsion bundles fatigue, fibers creep, moisture swings change launch characteristics. A Scorpio that was dead on at dusk is high and left by dawn if the dew gets in. Crews build rituals to chase that drift, test shots, quick adjustments, covers sealed tight. Misfires are ugly, arms that jump the string, bolts that shatter in the guide, frames that split. Every part is a compromise between strength and weight, between portability and reliability. We also have to talk maintenance. Sinew is biological, it rots, it stretches, crews rewrap, retie, and regrease constantly. Iron corrodes, wood swells, every mile of march wants to ruin your zero. Romans compensated with redundancy, spare parts, spare bundles, spare knowledge. You don't see that in the hero tales, but you see it in inventories and in how quickly they could reconstitute units after a storm. What nobody knew at the time, watching a Scorpio thread a shot through confusion, was how the idea would scale. This was the moment everything changed for field precision. Once troops accept that a small machine can reach out and take one life on purpose, they start arranging battles around that fact. Formations compress, standards drop, helmets get lower crests. The battlefield learns to hide. Meanwhile, something else was happening on the drawing boards. If one shot on command could break a plan, what about 20 on rhythm? The answer had gears. 2 Polybolos, the repeat-fire catapult. 3 days after a Scorpio silences a banner, a different sound rolls along the parapet, not the single thump of a torsion arm, but a steady mechanical heartbeat. Click, clack, thwip, then again, and again. Men look up because it doesn't stop. They don't understand yet that they're hearing a chain sing. The Polybolos starts with a stubborn idea. What if you could take human inconsistency out of the reload? Philo of Byzantium describes the trick: chains, sprockets, and a sliding carriage that does 2 jobs in one stroke. Pull the lever back and a claw catches the string, hauls it to the notch, and locks it. At the same time, the magazine above drops a single bolt into the channel. Push the lever forward and the claw releases, the arm snaps, and the bolt is gone. Repeat. The machine sets its own cadence. This only works if the guts keep time. The chain isn't decoration, it's the spine. Each link must be uniform, each tooth on the sprocket must meet it at the same angle or the claw misaligns and chews the string. In reconstructions that follow Philo's ratios, you see the discipline. The rocker frame pivots through a fixed arc. A pawl engages a ratchet so the carriage can't slip during draw. Detents tell the crew when they've reached full cock. It's a metronome you can stand behind. Stakes on a wall sustain suppressive fire. A single Scorpio makes people duck. A Polybolos makes them stay down. You don't count shots, you count the space between them. Engineers trying to push ladders find that there's always one more bolt arriving and then another, and the safe moment never arrives. Over distance, those extra seconds matter. An army that thought it could sprint between volleys runs out of nerve halfway. Rhythm is a weapon. Once your heartbeat syncs to the machine, you start waiting for permission to move. We've got receipts beyond the manual. Relief depictions of repeating devices are debated, but the mechanical logic holds underhand. Reconstructions have managed cadence, 6, 8, 10 shots in a tight window so long as crews keep their movements smooth and the magazine feeds without a hitch. The magazine is its own lesson, rails polished, a gate that meters one bolt at a time, and bolt heads sized to a standard so they don't jam. That's an ancient ammo problem solved with carpentry and patience. And the sound, predictable impact, teaches attackers to respect gaps that aren't there. The choreography becomes a character, 2 operators, sometimes 3. One anchors the frame and keeps the feet planted. One rides the lever, body weight doing the work instead of arms. The third handles the magazine, topping it off, clearing a misfeed, calling wind. They speak in short words, full feed, clear. When a gust hits or grit gets in the rails, the cadence hiccups and you feel the tension. The machine wants to keep its promise, the crew has to nurse it through. What nobody knew the first time they heard that heartbeat was how much of it is tolerance stacking. Wood swells, pins wear. A single loose pivot adds wobble to the carriage, wobble adds friction, friction slows the draw, a slow draw desynchronizes the feed. Siege dust is the enemy. Sand gets into the chain and turns precision into grinding. Crews improvise covers for the magazine mouth, swab rails with oil, and scribe marks where true lives so they can get back to it after a repair. Rain complicates everything. Wet sinew changes draw force. Wet bolts change mass. The Polybolos responds like any machine that runs on timing, small differences pile up. The fix isn't fancy test strings, weighed bolts, a discard bin for the ugly ones. You see the ancient version of quality control in the way they stack bolts by length and head width. They learned that the machine behaves if you feed it consistency. On a fence, a battery of Polybolos turns a bare approach into a denial zone. Lighter bolts won't punch plate at range, but over a siege yard they don't have to. They turn the space into a lottery nobody wants to enter. On defense, they let lower-skilled crews project fear. There's a psychological edge to hearing a rhythm you can't disrupt. It's not a single archer's nerves, it's a machine's appetite. There's a ceiling. Complexity hates chaos. When frames twist under heat and stress, when a tooth breaks or a link stretches, your automatic catapult becomes a sulking mess. A misfeed jams the carriage, a jam under load cracks a guide. A cracked guide means you're down until the carpenter comes. That's why some historians think the Polybolos saw niche use, where workshops lived nearby, where crews trained for weeks, where commanders believed in maintenance. But when it worked, it was a glimpse forward, auto-loading, repeatable timing. The idea that rate of fire can be designed, not begged from adrenaline. You can draw a straight line from this stubborn box of chains to later crank guns and feed systems, different energy sources, same hunger for cadence. It wasn't magic, it was a ledger of tolerances, a habit of measuring, and a crew that trusted a rhythm. While that heartbeat pounded along the walls, down in the harbor, another device waited that didn't ask for timing so much as timing plus leverage. Precision wasn't just horizontal anymore. It reached up, grabbed, and lifted. Archimedes' claw, the ship killer. The Roman helmsman thinks he's close enough. Oars bite, shields stack along the prow, and the ram points at stone. Then the harbor wall moves, not outward, upward. A timbered arm rises like a dock suddenly alive, a shadow passes over the deck, and iron teeth drop for the throat of the ship. Syracuse isn't just walls and courage, it's leverage. Archimedes' claw is a hidden boom built into the seaside fortifications, a vertical post with a pivoting arm capped by a grapnel. Counterweights hang on the landward side, cables run through pulleys, and behind stone a crew works a capstan. When the grapnel finds a hull, the city turns muscle into moments. Action first, the operator peers through a slit, judges distance and drift, and signals. The boom's hinge lets the arm swing out over the water, low and quiet. As the Roman ship closes, the grapnel drops, hooks timber between the oar banks, and the crew heaves on the winch. You hear the capstan groan, then the physics kick in. The arm doesn't lift the ship like a crane lifts a statue, it yanks the bow, spoils the trim, and drags the waterline into the air. Oars smash, men fall. The ram that wanted to run straight now points at the sky. Sometimes that's enough. A hull doesn't like asymmetry. Pull a bow a few handspans and the stern buries, push a wave at the wrong moment and the ship rolls off balance. If the crew panics and shifts, the shift deepens the tilt. If the grapnel bites a beam and the boom swings in, the ship slams side-on into stone. Planking cracks, fastenings snap. Even when it doesn't capsize, it's a stunned boxer trying to remember where the ropes are. Do we have hard proof? Ancient accounts describe engines that lifted ships into the air and dashed them against the rocks. Hyperbole is free, but the harbor tells a story too. The terrain at Syracuse, rocky coves, narrow approaches, predictable lanes favored anchored machinery. Plausible mechanical models show that a counterweighted arm with a routable grapnel can impose enough moment to roll a trireme's light frame, especially at the bow where mass is lower and leverage best. You don't need to hoist the entire ship, you need to destabilize it at the exact worst time. Engineering is the quiet hero here. Load paths run from hull to hook to arm to pivot to anchorage sunk into bedrock. That means stonework that can take shock, iron straps that don't shear, and pivots that don't seize after a week of spray. The grapnel teeth have to be shaped to catch between strakes without just tearing through like a rake. The cable must resist chafe and wet stretch. The counterweight needs travel room so it can drop when the hook bites, buying the crew a precious instant of lift before they even touch the capstan. Coordination matters. The spotter calls the drop, the winch team hauls in rhythm, a second crew braces the boom against reactive forces. If they overpull, they can yank the hook free or fling a hull into the wall so hard it breaks the arm. If they underpull, they waste a reveal. Timing isn't measured in numbers, it's measured in the feel under the palm when the line goes from slack to live. Deterrence is the bigger prize. After a few ships get grabbed, rumors outrun the tide. Roman captains start to hesitate at the edge of hook range. Hesitation breaks ramming runs and makes them angle their approach, which exposes flanks to missiles and fire pots. A defense that yanks ships makes every wave a warning. You can see the doctrine shift, ladders deployed farther out, boarding bridges tested twice, horns signaling retreat at the first lurch. Fear moves faster than oars. One bad story can turn a fleet shy for a season. Scale is the live debate. How many claws? How fast could they reset? Realistically, not many and not fast. The cycles per hour depend on how quickly a crew can clear a fouled hook, swing the boom back, and reset counterweights. Misses eat time. Smashed timbers cling and demand knives. Every shot exposes the mechanism's position, so you need overlapping coverage or decoys to keep attackers guessing. That pushes you toward a small number of well-sighted arms guarding choke points, rather than a forest of them. Even if you grant all that, the plausibility holds. The claw didn't need to be a ship-eating monster on every wall, it needed to be a nightmare at the key gap. In combined defense, stones, bolts, cranes, the claw is the punch you don't see twice. And here's the twist that fits our theme, it's not future tech. It's simple machines arranged with malice and foresight, levers, pulleys, mass, waiting in silence until a captain commits. While machines moved matter, other minds started moving air and fire. The next set of shouldn't exist weapons didn't grab hulls, they grabbed lungs. Chemical and smoke warfare. We like to think chemical warfare is modern. It is. The moment people learned that burning certain things makes certain other things unlivable, the battlefield changed. Control the air and you control panic. You don't need to kill everyone, you need to make them run. Breath is the softest target, threaten it and courage shuts off like a valve. Frame it this way, chemistry isn't about beakers on a bench, it's about recipes that behave in chaos. You need fuels that light under wind, thickeners that make flames cling, powders that steal oxygen in tight spaces, and containers and nozzles that deliver all of that where it matters. Add smoke to blind, heat to drive, and timing to trap. The stakes are cruel. A crew that can throw fire that sticks to wet wood owns a harbor. A tunnel team that turns breath into a weapon can break the one place defenders thought they were safe underground. A besieger who poisons a well doesn't just win a day, he collapses a week. It's suffocation, confusion, and the sense that the elements have switched sides. We're drawing our lines carefully. There's myth here, tales of sun mirrors and alchemists who blow on bottles and birth dragons. We're keeping what leaves residue, what texts describe in workable steps, what reconstructions can replicate without cheating. Ceramic siphon nozzles that show burn patterns, charred tunnel linings with sulfur signatures, sediment layers with arsenic that doesn't belong. If we can't point to a shard or a paragraph with teeth, we'll park it. 3 cases open the file. Fire that clings to water and refuses to go out, delivered under pressure across a ship's deck. Underground smoke that doesn't just sting, it steals the air and replaces it with poison. And wells turn from life into leverage, laced with toxins that march with the enemy long after the army leaves. The point isn't spectacle, it's control. When you can shape an environment, air, heat, visibility, you don't fight a soldier, you fight his instincts. The sea burned first.
When words became the interface, LLMs and emergent behavior, we hit a wall staring at heat maps, so the field took a sideways step. Instead of peering into weights, we talked to them. Scale up language models, more data, more parameters, and something odd happened. The output stopped feeling like code and started feeling like conversation. You type a question, and the system answered with fluent paragraphs, citations, jokes, even apologies. The black box didn't open. It started speaking, straight to our social brains. At first, this looked like better autocomplete. Then a researcher typed a handful of examples, just 3 or 4, and the model picked up the pattern and continued with the right format, right reasoning, no retraining. Few-shot learning looked like a party trick until it worked across arithmetic, translation, classification, code. In-context learning became a new superpower. Steer the model's behavior by the way you talk to it. Prompting wasn't a query, it became a steering wheel. Here's where it got weirder. Small nudges, one sentence of instruction, a system message, a single "don't do X" could flip performance dramatically. People joked that prompting was like steering a whale, tiny taps moving a massive creature. Underneath, the model had a latent space packed with skills learned from a vast text ocean. Prompts were keys that unlocked rooms we didn't know existed. Teams discovered emergent abilities, capabilities that didn't appear at small scales, but snapped on as models grew. Chain a few words like "let's think step by step," and accuracy on reasoning tasks jumped. Ask it to reflect on an answer before finalizing, and errors dropped. Give it a tool, code execution, a calculator, a web browser, and it started planning. Write a snippet, test it, correct itself, try again. We weren't training a new brain for each skill. We were discovering behaviors hiding in a general one. Meanwhile, labs found that the model could explain its answers, ask for reasons, and it produced tidy rationales. Chain of thought became a standard instruction. Show the steps. Teachers saw students learn from these walkthroughs. Researchers saw benchmarks rise. But there was a catch that echoed our earlier lesson. The presence of a plausible rationale didn't prove that's how the model reached the conclusion. The story correlated with correctness. It wasn't a window into the computation. We had a new illusion: eloquent, helpful, seductive. The flip side of eloquence was hallucination. With language as its medium, the model could produce precise nonsense, confident tone, wrong facts, a fabricated citation, a law that never passed. The system wasn't lying in a human sense. It was continuing patterns that fit the prompt and context. If the training soup contained ambiguities or gaps, the model filled them with fluent guesses. In practice, this mattered. A sales email included a non-existent feature. A legal summary invented precedent. A medical draft recommended an interaction the physician had to catch. The voice sounded trustworthy. That was the danger. Still, the pull was strong because the interface let people collaborate. A scientist could rough out a paper section and have the model tighten it. A programmer could describe an algorithm and get functional code. A clinician could outline symptoms and differential diagnoses and receive a structured workup template. Tool use amplified this. Retrieval augmented generation pulled relevant documents into context. Function calling let the model invoke external APIs. Sandbox code execution turned thoughts into tested outputs. Language became the glue for a growing tool belt. People started noticing another pattern: self-organization. Ask the model to reason in multiple samples, then take a majority vote, self-consistency, and accuracy improved. Ask 2 model instances to debate a question. Argue, critique, revise, and the final answer strengthened. These weren't proofs of understanding. They were ensemble effects wrapped in dialogue, like crowdsourcing inside one model's head. The stakes rose with persuasion. A system that can summarize and argue can also convince. It can tailor tone, adapt to a reader's beliefs, and shape perceptions. That power isn't anchored to truth by default. When outputs guide decisions, medical, financial, political, fluent but ungrounded language is a risk amplifier. The same grace that makes a help desk better makes a scam more believable. Organizations tried guardrails. They filtered prompts, constrained outputs, embedded retrieval to ground claims in documents. They added disclaimers, maybe inaccurate, and layered moderation. Helpful, yes, but the core remained: a statistical model that learned to mimic reasoning through language, sometimes producing real reasoning, sometimes staging it. We were piloting a system that felt cooperative without guarantees about its internal path. There was also the discovery that you could make the model better by asking it to. Slow down. Explain your reasoning. Improve results. Show scratchpad. Unlocked intermediate steps. Even when those steps weren't the literal inner computation, they improved performance by changing the search. The model did in its hidden space. We engineered the output to get nicer answers. The fog inside stayed, and we felt we'd gained control because the story sounded like thinking. Then came tool-enabled agents. Give the model memory, goals, and access to actions, and it started chaining tasks. Plan, call a function, evaluate, revise, repeat. The line between chat and action blurred. A conversational interface invited trust. Behind it, an opaque planner spun. The promise was efficiency. The fear was simple. If a predictor can mislead with words, what happens when it's allowed to act? We had turned language into a control surface for a black box. It was empowering, it was disorienting, and it set up the next move,